And action!
Welcome to an Intentional Marriage Podcast. We are your hosts, Kristen and Chad, and we are here to talk all things marriage.
Yes, because we know, Kristen, great marriages don't just happen.
You have to be intentional. Oh,
yes,
goodness.
You do. Kristen, today's topic is near and dear to our heart.
Well, it has been the most requested podcast topic, and I was a little surprised, to be honest, but then again, why should I be? Because our topic is parenting.
Whoa.
Something that affects many marriages. I mean,
it affects a lot. So we start asking people and friends and putting it out there. What are some topics? What are the things you wanted to hear? And it just seemed to be overwhelming.
Yes.
Parenting kept jumping to the top of the list. And again, we are parents. We're parents of 4 adult kids now. We were parents for 31 years. We had
kids in our house.
So we're going to jump in today, but Kristen, there's so much about parenting.
Yes.
I think we need to break this up in a couple episodes.
Yes. I would like to have the conversation today just about some things that are relatable to all stages of parenting. I think some foundational principles, and then we can have the conversation about maybe parenting littles, teens, adult kids, because we've had the whole gamut. And so I think too, to introduce our listeners that may not know us, we should at least give a little background of how many kids we have, their ages. So, and I think it's okay to say their names, but we have Carly is our oldest, and she is married to Ryan. They have 2 little kids. She's 32 now. Then we have Alex and Hannah, and they have 3 littles, and they actually live out of state here, so we miss them. In Georgia. Then we have Cameron, our son, who he is single, was in the Marine Corps.
He's single and ready to mingle.
Yeah, so hit us up.
If you listen to this, you're married, so don't worry. But if you have a friend.
I'm all about matchmaking. And then we have Maddie, our youngest. She is 21, but she's married to Carter. They do not have kids. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. So anyway, those are our 4 kids. And the age gap between them, Carly, our oldest, and Maddie, is 11 years.
Yes,
so we have 2 of each. And this is what I like to say. We've kind of had the gamut of experience. We have 2 girls and 2 boys, and our girls are as different as night and day, and our boys are as different as night and day. So I just kind of wanted to preface these next few episodes with our experience here.
Yes, and I'm glad you did that, Kristen, because people need to understand
where we're coming
from, where we're at, that we're not perfect, our parenting wasn't perfect, but parenting impacts marriage.
Yes.
It impacted our marriage. Many of the fights, challenges, things we faced, things we did were around our kids, dealt with parenting. Yes, there's issues with finance. Yes, there's issues about sex. Yes, there's in-laws.
Yes.
But the issue that came up so often for so many years and our world revolved around were our kids.
Right. The most of our conflicts centered around our kids.
Yes.
That's fair to say. But I do think too that I want to preface this that we are not licensed psychologists or counselors. We are going to be speaking. No, we are going to be speaking out of our experience and our belief system. And so take whatever with a grain of salt. You might agree with some of the stuff we say. You might not. That's okay. We're not here to, give hard and fast rules. I just want to share from our experience and our hearts. So,
and Kristen, I'm glad you said that because every marriage is different.
Yes.
Every kid's different. Every situation.
Yes.
Maybe it's a blended family, whatever it is. They're going to hopefully take something that they can work in and make fit in their marriage, in their parenting technique and styles. But I think where you're going with it first is what are some of these key foundational things that maybe we would hope all parents would have. And if you're thinking about kids, you're none yet, these are good things to begin talking about now.
Yes, and I think the first one that carries through all seasons, whether littles, teens, or adults, is that you have to put your marriage first. You have to prioritize marriage above the kids.
Oh.
And that is because your spouse is going to outlast your kids. Your kids are only in your house for 18 years, but
I know you say that, and I've heard that so often over the years. Prioritize your marriage over your kids. But why does that seem so hard, Kristen? Why do sometimes people put their kids over their spouse? And what can they do to switch that?
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons, but they're demanding. So, you know what I mean? Like, especially the little
the
kids.
Spouse or the
no,
kids?
the kids. Especially when the kids are little, you're just giving out so much energy, and they're demanding. You're cooking, you're feeding, you're cleaning up, you know what I mean, taking them places. You've got all the things going on, and so they're demanding of your attention. And so, it's like the noisy wheel gets the grease. That's where your attention goes. And, kids can't wait, but adults can. So it's like, I would tend to the kids, and then I felt like I would push you in the background because it's like, well, you can wait, you understand. But I also think too, maybe there's some unhealthy dynamics too. Maybe, parents want to please their kids. And so the spouse's needs get kind of pushed aside. I think there's a variety of different ways. What do you think?
Yeah, because Kristen, you're right. And when they're little, they got little activities, play dates, then they start going to school. Maybe they start getting into activities. The schedules, it seems what happens, they begin to revolve around the kids' schedules. And not that those things are bad. We had our kids in youth sports and church activities. But what happens is when that becomes all you do as parents.
Right.
In our marriage, if the only time we're connecting is when we're driving to the ball field.
Right.
The only conversation we're having is about the game they had or the concert they were in. And so we don't want to discourage some of these things because these things are so good for kids, where they're learning teamwork, they're learning discipline, they're learning how to listen to a coach. All those things are great. But what happens is the marriage slowly gets put on the back burner.
Yes.
And so we talked about this in a previous episode. We want to make your marriage a priority by putting a date night on this schedule.
Yes.
Maybe every Tuesday or every other Saturday, we're not going to the kids' game or kids' event. Right. You and I are going to still go on a date.
Yes.
Because guess what? We're showing our kids, our littles, Mom and Dad are still dating.
Yes.
Mom and Dad are still prioritizing each other. Dad loves Mom. And this is a habit we're letting our kids see
the importance of our relationship.
Yes.
And the fact that our world does not revolve around the kids. I mean, yes, it does, but the importance and our marriage comes first. And so that, I think, is a foundational principle.
And I just can't stress how we say it, but it is hard for some couples. Some people can't let go of it. Because, Kristen, I know there's couples out there that we've talked to over the years. Their identity is almost in their kids.
Yes.
Their identity is in what their kids do. Their kids succeed. Their kids, were the first to walk, the first to talk, the first to eat. They were tying their shoe. I get it. It's so exciting. And we have grandkids and we just wrap around them. But again, that can't be who you are. Your value is more than that.
Yeah, and I think back to the days when, our kids were in school and you're meeting different parents, and I felt like I didn't have a name because I was, Carly's mom. And you being in the school system too, it was like, you're Chad's wife. You're Carly's mom. You're Cam's mom. I'm like, I'm Kristen. I have an identity, but it's easy to do. But I think, especially when kids are little and the teenage years, you have to create that space to make your marriage a priority. So I think that's something that goes through all stages of parenting. And what would fall right under that is providing a united front in that. We're prioritizing our marriage, but then also we are standing as one in front of the kids, because especially, you kind of see those memes or reels. What is Dad's in the room, but then where's Mom? She's the one in charge. No, we're both in charge. We both are agreeing on the situation, what's necessary. And especially as teens, they try to pit you against one another.
Yeah, and I think we're going to jump into teens in another episode. And I think we're going to just keep that foundational. Yes. But that united front is not as easy as we think. And the reason is you came from a different family than you, and my parents disciplined different than you.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden we come into marriage and we have these ideas of what parenting will be like, and that we're both going to do it the exact same. And as soon as our little 1-year-old or 3-year-old sasses off to us and tells us no, are we going to spank? Are we going to ground? Are we going to pat their head? What? And all of a sudden you like, Johnny, don't do that. You're funny.
We didn't have a kid, Johnny, honey.
Well, I'm going, smack his little mouth, spank his bottom. And I'm not doing that. And so all of a sudden, early on, we can be ununified, have disunity over how to raise the kids. So it's so important that we talk about what are the expectations, how are we going to discipline, what do we expect from our kids, what are our values we want to instruct and teach. Because if you know what values you have and what you expect, we expect you to be respectful of mommy. We expect you to say yes when we tell you to do something. We expect you to clean your room when we do it, when we tell you to. Mm-hmm. But what happens is if we don't talk about it, communicate in our marriage what we expect, what we value, it will begin to come out in our children, the discipline or lack thereof, or different styles we have.
Right. And again, I think it's important to clearly define what is going to be tolerated and what's not going to be tolerated. And like you said, we said absolutely disrespect would be just, that's not even a question. Yeah. And we had to have conversations about, well, is spanking okay? Is it a timeout? Is it taking things away? Is it
sitting in a corner?
Right, a timeout chair. And again, we're kind of talking about littles here, but I think that kind of leads us into the next point of what's consistent is understanding the individuality of each child, because what works with one doesn't work with the other. We had the same expectations, but our execution plan was different with each kid because, Carly, our oldest, you could just kind of say, I'm disappointed. And, we don't do that. And she'd straighten right up. Then comes our third one, Cam. I don't care if that look, I don't care if dad gives me that look, but dad grabs a hold of him and gets in his face. That sends the message. But to Maddie, that would hurt her. You know what I mean? So our expectation was the same, but the way we kind of executed the discipline or technique was different.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a real good point. So what we did, again, we're maybe a little older, we had no trouble spanking our kids. But we really only had to spank one of them because the other ones usually minded or something to say lasted enough. And Kristen, when Cameron, and we love our son Cameron, he was our Marine, but he was that bullhead, stubborn kid that many of you have. He wouldn't do something over and over and over. And so Kristen would use a wooden spoon. So forgive her.
We're past the statute of limitations. Nobody can call CPS on us now.
It was the point of, the little hand smack wouldn't work, the little pat in the butt wouldn't work. And so she started using a wooden spoon as he started getting a little bigger. And she would always give him the 1, 2, wooden spoon, 3. Hey, because if he got to 3, he knew the wooden spoon was coming, and all of a sudden he would do it.
Yes.
He learned. I'm not gonna say he was a quick learner. He was probably a slow learner. But so when he went off to kindergarten, I remember he was going off to school, young 5s, whatever it was. Kristen was like, "Okay, Cam, remember it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5." Well, Mom, I thought it was 1, 2, wooden spoon, 3, 4, 5.
I said, leave out the wooden spoon part,
Leave out the wooden spoon. Just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
Because, again, we had to be more demanding and intentional, maybe
a little bit more firm.
More firm with him, where the other kids, a look, a pat, a yell, did the trick.
Yeah.
At least when they were little.
Yes.
But it's interesting, Chris, is go back to what we instill, what values, and you talked about that respect. I want to go back because my dad instilled in me and my 2 brothers, we were not going to disrespect our mother.
Right.
We were not going to talk back to her. We were not going to sass her. We were not going to say no. Now, we did a pretty good job of that when he wasn't around because we got what we deserved. And I tried to instill that in my kids. Yeah. Some of you are going to instill certain things in your kids because it was instilled in you,
right.
or some you didn't see it.
Yes.
Maybe you and your siblings were rude to your mom or disrespectful to your dad, and you don't want that. So you want to do the opposite. So whatever you choose to set up, disrespect, respecting authorities, all these things, talk about them. Really do that before you have kids, because it's going to challenge you when you do, because the things you talked about may not actually come out how you think.
Well, yeah, and parenting littles, I think that's the season where you're in teaching mode. You're all about meeting needs and instilling values. And I think all of those are age appropriate. I mean, that's you set the foundation when they're little. And so, like you said, we didn't tolerate disrespect, and we wanted to instill responsibility. And so that looks like, okay, we're going to pick up our toys when we're done. We don't treat, our objects in our house in, a rough way. We take care of things. We clean up after ourselves. We take care of ourselves, and, we treat others with a certain amount of manners and respect. And that also goes with respecting authority. So those were some values that we wanted to instill in our kids. And also our faith was something that we wanted to pass on to our kids. And I remember a former pastor of ours said one time, the way to pass on your faith to your kids is to impress upon them the wonder of God's world and the wisdom in his word.
Say that again.
And that stuck with me, and I'll repeat it because it is kind of a mouthful, but you have to kind of think about it. The way to pass on your faith to your kids is to impress upon them the wonder of God's world and the wisdom in his word. And so the way we parented in that way, or I kind of took that specifically, is that, any opportunity that we're out in nature and we see, like I just did this with little Sailor the other day. She said, Mimi, I found a rock that's shaped like a heart. And I said, do you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me that God loves me. He created me, like he created those rocks. And that heart shape reminds me that God loves me. Or, we're out picking little flowers and little dandelions. And I thought, wow, look at what God created. He created this flower with such detail. He created you too, and God loves you. So anytime I was out in nature with the kids, I would try to use some sort of little teaching lesson to just, pass that on. And then also, I think some of my favorite times were tucking the kids in bed and reading them Bible stories, and just
nighttime prayers. But we also instilled through that is at a young age, we're going to be in church every Sunday. That was important, that skipping or ball games were not going to get in the way. And I know it's hard because now schedules used to be Sunday was sacred. Now it's not. But what you can make it sacred as a mom and dad and say, this is our day for our family. We're going to go to church. We're going to have lunch together, or we're going to do activities. And maybe that evening you do something, but what you instill and what you show them are things they're going to take with them. And what's the Bible say? Train up a child in the way he should go.
And when he is old, he will not depart.
He will not depart. And so that is our goal. They can.
It's a principle. It's not a promise.
No, it's a principle that we try and stand by, because raising kids is hard. In today's culture, it's even harder. So we wanted that help and support from church, from our values and morals that we get from the Bible. And so we knew we needed help, because we couldn't do it. So we needed help from friends and other people with similar age kids. Like, well, how do you deal with your kid? My kid's a brat. My kid's sassy. So you need tips and tricks from other people going through it, or people that have been through it. And so, but no, we were not perfect. I tell you, we failed a lot. And so we had to learn to apologize and own up to our mistakes a lot.
Another principle, yes.
Oh my gosh, because I could blow off the handle. I could blow steam quick and, what are you doing, Cameron?
Yeah.
And I had to apologize so much. I'm sorry I got so mad. I'm sorry I overreacted. Will you forgive me?
Yes.
You can't act that way.
Yes.
This is how we do things. But I found myself getting angry at their behavior. And so I had to show them many times I apologize, probably more than I wanted to, and say I'm sorry. And once I learned that I'm not going to get mad anymore at their behavior, I'm going to say, okay, your time out. Okay, give me your phone. Or okay, no TV. Once I started doing that, I didn't have to yell anymore. It didn't change it or fix it totally on my end.
Right.
But I know at times that affected our marriage because you didn't like how angry I got at the kids.
Exactly.
And now you're mad at me, and I'm like, why are you mad at me? Be mad at the kids.
Yeah.
But you don't have to get so angry. So again, we circle back. How we deal with our kids is affecting our marriage.
Which, okay, brings me to the next point of, I think this is this was a game changer for me when I really grasped this concept of clear expectations, clear consequences, but following through with that. You know, like back to the 1, 2, wooden spoon, 3. I had told him umpteen times up until the wooden spoon came out. So it wasn't like I was this abusive mother. I mean, let's put that. But it was like, okay, you got to pick up your room. Okay, you got to clean up the toys. Come on. All right, let's go. Come on. Before you go outside, we got to pick up. Come on. And he just ignored me. And so that's when I would be like, 1, 2, wooden spoons coming out. It was like my last resort, you know? So once I started to say, okay, you need to pick up your toys. And if you don't do it within this certain amount of time, mommy's going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to set the timer. And when this timer goes off and you don't have the toys picked up, you know what? We're all going to go out and have fun. And I'm sorry that you're going to be in your room watching us through the window. And then if he still didn't do it after that time, then I could come back and say, I'm sorry you made that choice. I could let the consequences be the bad guy and not me being the bad guy. And so I am a firm believer in that kids need to know the expectations. They need to know the consequences, and you need to follow through.
Yes. You're right, because you need to follow through, because I see nowadays with so many kids and parents, they're saying it, there's no follow through.
Yes.
There's no expectation. The kid's acting like a maniac. They're throwing a tantrum, whatever it is. Oh, I don't want him to be mad at me.
Right.
I don't want Johnny to be upset.
Or you're just trying to diffuse the situation. Yes. And, if people are around, you don't want to look like a bad parent. So that's where I say set yourself up for success, especially in parenting littles. Again, this principle carries through teen years too. Tell them what you expect. Because how they don't know what they don't know. And so telling them, this is what I expect from you. This is what's going to happen if this expectation isn't met, and following through. Yes. Because it is easier. It is easier to just let things slide. It is easier to just do it yourself, but that's not teaching them responsibility. And that was one of the values that we wanted to instill. So I think really for parents of littles, really define what your value system is, what you want to teach your kids, what is important to you, and then, understanding the individuality of each kid. Like I said, that's going to play out differently. I think back to just inserting real quick, something else when it comes to the individuality is try not to compare. Try not to compare your kids.
You're not like your brother.
Yes. Yeah, we can't do that because I'll use our boys as an example. Alex and Cam, same household, same parents, but their makeup is just completely different. And so much so that they were just 2 grades behind in school, but we sent them to different elementary schools because I didn't want Cameron to follow in Alex's footsteps and Alex was a model student and a rule follower, and I just didn't want.
We didn't want. If I can interject, sometimes teachers and other adults unknowingly just say, "Oh, are you like your brother? Or you're not like your brother? Or you're just like your sister?"
Yes,
good or bad, and we didn't want that. So we recognize that. So when you know your kids and you can tell their differences. Sometimes that's our job as parents to protect that.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing. Cameron is a wonderful kid, wonderful young man now, but his path was different than Alex's.
Exactly.
But people do that. Oh, you're nothing like your brother or sister. Oh, you're just like your old man.
Yeah.
These comments people make, meaning to have conversation, can be hurtful to kids.
Right.
So we chose to do that.
Right.
And Kristen, I kind of want to end with a couple failure stories.
A couple? Failure. How many?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one on my end and probably one on your end. Because we didn't do this right. We failed multiple. The one I'm thinking of, and it's a car driving again. We had minivans. We had, gosh, probably 3 minivans.
Wait, are you telling my story?
No. Let me finish,
okay?
We would, always drive because we lived far from our parents, so we would drive. Well, anyway, our third child, Cameron, would usually, as we're driving down the road, Houdini, put his arms in, get out of the car seat. And he's starting to walk around the minivan.
And this is before car seats were like
yes.
NASA,
he wasn't
they're
flying to the
straight
moon.
jackets.
It was just a clip and it went over his shoulders pretty easy. He would get out of that all the time. He hated that. He would squirm out and he's walking around the minivan. Cameron, sit down. Cameron, get back to your seat. Cameron. So finally, I got tired of saying it, and we'd be going 70 miles an hour down the road, and I'd slam on the brakes. All of a sudden, bam! He would hit the ground. Just bawl, and he hit his head or something. Get in your seat. And I was trying to use it to get him to sit down. Thinking back now, that was probably not safe. I probably should have got a better car seat. Probably should have made it so he couldn't get out. But my attempt to teach him was probably not the best. I'm embarrassed by it today, knowing that I did that multiple times. Because like, Chad, knock it off. You're going to hurt him.
Yeah. I'm like, you're going to break the kid's neck. Stop it.
He'll learn. And I realized that was probably a parenting fail. I could have done better in his seat and taught him to sit there.
Well, that leads me to my story. It still involves Cameron getting out of his seat again. Okay, so back in, I think it was that same red minivan that you're referring to. This is that time period. So Carly was probably, 7. Alex would have been maybe 5, 3, and 1 or somewhere around that. I think so, because Cam was just 1. And I remember I pulled up to this garage sale in this neighborhood, and
now listen, it was a well-to-do neighborhood in Grand Rapids.
Very
affluent, and we're up in your minivan.
So so I pull up into the driveway, and it was a hot summer day, so I had left the windows up with the air condition running, and I don't.
Alex was sleeping.
Well, yeah. Anyway. All of a sudden, I'm in the garage, and I told the kids, don't get out. I said, just stay here. Mommy's going to run up to the garage sale and look at a few things. And so whatever you do, just stay there and don't move. So I'm in the garage and looking through some things, and all of a sudden, I hear some lady go, oh my gosh, that van is moving, and there's kids in it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I look up and there is my van rolling down their driveway backwards heading towards the road and over their grass, and I started running, and I met another lady who's like, she runs up to the van, and I'm like, there's Cam standing in the driver's seat acting like he's driving, put it in reverse, and there's Carly and Alex just sitting in the back seat like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I'm like, Cameron, what are you doing? And I'm looking at Carly, and I'm knocking on the window, and I'm like, Carly, open the door. And so, yeah, as we rolled over their sprinkler system and just about grazed their mailbox, Carly opened the door. I body slammed this lady out of the way, and I hopped and scooped Cam up, threw him on my lap, and maneuvered the car and drove off. I was mortified. I was so embarrassed, and I was scared to death to tell you because of my parenting fail in this situation. So yeah, we've had several. I mean, I could, tell of the time the neighbor found my son in the road and brought him up. There's a lot of different stories that we could share, and maybe we could share those in the next one.
I think the next episode we can jump into the teenage years and start talking about that. But yeah, a lot of parenting fails, and we want to encourage you. You're gonna fail as parents. It's okay. You're not gonna be perfect. You're gonna do your best. You're gonna read books. You're gonna listen to podcasts. You're gonna get advice. But it's a lot of trial and error. So I know we failed a lot, but where we failed, our faith, God filled in the gap.
Amen.
For our kids. In those areas that we were intentionally trying to be good, we screwed up. God filled in, and our kids, they're not perfect today. We still like, oh man, I hope we didn't send them to counseling too many times, because things do happen, but we had good intention. We gave them love. We gave them a foundation of mom and dad and a faith. And that's what was important.
Yes.
So what is important to you guys as you're raising those littles? What are you setting for them? What are your expectations? And how is it impacting your marriage? How are you showing them mom is still first, dad is still first, and then into the kids? So parenting is not easy, but it's wonderful. We love it now. The grandparent age, like, this is the reward for not killing our little kids.
Absolutely.
And so we're enjoying it.
Yes.
The fruits are.
And here's the thing. Parents with littles, moms with littles especially, you will sleep again. This doesn't last forever. And I know, those are all cliches, but you're going to make it through. You're going to make it through just doing your best. And if you provide, a united front and like I said, by the grace of God, just pray. And each day, is a new day to make good choices and make mistakes, but it's going to be okay.
That's right. It's going to be. So again, with parenting, be intentional. Talk about it. Set those expectations, because your marriage, that's what's setting that pace. So again, because great marriages and great parenting don't just happen.
You have to be intentional.
Thanks for joining us today, guys.
See you next time.